This podcast is brought to you by DATAMEDIA, email deliverability and email marketing consulting services.
Think about this from the bigger picture. It's really about creating like a trusted environment for our mutual customers, which is email recipients. Mailbox providers care about that, and so do senders, right? The goal is really to help keep them safe, keep them happy within their inboxes, and to also protect our own brands from becoming a target of abuse, right? Like we're seeing volume of emails that's increasing year over year, and that's a good thing, right? But there are new attack vectors that come with that constantly. CloudStrike, is unrelated to email necessarily, but a very recent example of how bad things are getting, how critical security is in our world on the internet today.
Hello and welcome to episode number 7 of EmailGeeks.show, the podcast where once a month the leading email experts share their knowledge about email marketing, email deliverability, and marketing. My guest today is Meyer, the Chief Marketing Officer of SocketLabs and the creator of the newsletter Send It Right. My name is Sella Yoffe and I'm an email deliverability consultant. I'm working with global email senders, startups, and email service providers on improving their email deliverability, email authentication, and email strategy. And I'm the host of this podcast. Good morning, Lauren. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on the show, Sella. It's nice to see you.
Yeah. We share love, not just to email deliverability and email marketing, but also to something else. Let's say it's a hobby and the passion we both share. More on that later.
Cool. Sounds good.
Your career path is unique with marketing, deliverability, and technological roles. Can you tell us how did you get into email?
I think I got into email the way that a lot of people did, which is spamming people. Just kidding, sort of, honestly. My first job with an email was for an affiliate marketing company who was really kind of like raking it in with that cost per click, cost per acquisition offer kind of thing that was really popular back in the early 2000s. So I started in 2006. At the time, whitelisting actually meant you could get your mail delivered to the inbox pretty consistently, of course, until you did something wrong and they booted you off for bad behavior. Since then, I think I've kind of been all over the map. I've worked for a startup where I was the 5th person hired and working, 16-hour days from home. Within that job, I think what was really fun is I sent from about 10 to 15 different ESPs off and on for the entire time that I worked there. So really helpful in my next job, which was with MailChat, which is where I started to get really deep into deliverability, compliance, things like that, right? I've actually worked for 3 different ESPs. One of those was servicing mostly Fortune 500, Fortune 100 customers, which was a really cool experience because it taught me that even if you're a household name, you still have to abide by the rules that the mailbox providers set, right? So you've got these people coming and getting, spam house listed and, demanding to kind of have that listing removed. And you're like, well, you're purchasing lists. You're doing a lot of things that you shouldn't be doing. So realizing that deliverability really did kind of apply to everybody, even way back, let's say a decade ago. Right. 2 of the ESPs that I worked for were kind of like little engines that could, MailJet, let's say back in the days when everybody thought that we were just called MailChimp when I would say it because they'd never heard of us. Or perhaps they thought that I was, working for an airline company because our logo sometimes included like a plane. So that was really fun. But, my role there was really head of deliverability and compliance. And this really meant ensuring that we allowed as many customers in the door as possible, giving them a great experience, really rolling out that red carpet, and then having them start to pay us while simultaneously trying to keep all the bad actors who wanted to send spam and phish through our platform out of the equation, right? This is really kind of quite the balancing act to kind of prevent bad while you're enabling good when there's a freemium model and you're dealing with, thousands and thousands of signups per month. So that was really challenging. I took a stop off at Kickbox, which is where I started kind of, really kind of, I guess, honing my marketing chops a little bit more. We were unleashing a deliverability monitoring platform at the time, which is where I got to kind of take all the things that I've been learning about email in the past 14 years of my career and really kind of use those to help shape what their monitoring platform should offer, to really start educating people on deliverability and really kind of like how to send it right. And I guess, it's like probably, sort of attempting to make our company sound smart. So people would want to choose our brand new product over the more established players like Validity, 250 OK, back when that was still a thing. And now we bring me to SocketLabs, where I'm kind of, just sort of taking everything that I've learned from all of these different roles and trying to apply that to our marketing efforts. We're really attempting with our team to kind of create content that educates the industry, while really, our fantastically talented team of product engineering folks are really building like really cool things with analytics, the things that I always dreamed about having. And it's my job to really kind of like get that message out, let people know why this is something that they need, even though we've been working with really challenging analytics for the last so many long. So anyway, I guess, I'm taking us down a really long road and I don't know we want to go there. So basically, I've been in email for 18 years since I fell into that pothole in the street that we call email. I've sent a little bit of spam, a whole lot of ham, and I very much believe in using your data to justify what best practices you really need to be following and how to identify what your next best move is going to be with email.
It seems that now and then someone, usually a big tech, is trying to kill email or at least disrupt it. Apple MPP was a significant disruptor, as email senders lost their ability to track opens in emails. Email open metrics are now usually bloated due to Apple MPP. That was in late 2021, but still, I see many email platforms ignoring MPP. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think there are just so many reasons why ESPs are kind of doing this, right? First, I think we kind of just need to talk about the fact that there is just so much that's changing with email right now, right? Like there's privacy, there are security issues that we're trying to kind of protect our users from. Then there's also like legislation, like GDPR in Europe, CASL in Canada, CCPA in California. So all of these things are really kind of coming together to really shape what the future of email is looking like. Right. It's really the goal is to kind of provide a happier experience for customers, right? And I think there's so many reasons why these vendors are not doing this, right? First of all, it's not easy to separate human activities from bot activities. Technology just kind of keeps changing, and even when there's like very, very smart people who have attempted to do this, they've spent a lot of time, a lot of energy. It's still really hard to feel good about the accuracy of kind of what you're reporting on, particularly when you're considering that customers are using that information to determine who they should send to in the future. That's a very big responsibility for an ESP. Right. I think when you think about the technology changes that are happening, again, you're asking somebody to go back to a dev when there's a new change in the process to push another update live, right? Which I don't know if any of you have ever worked with product or engineering teams. They want to ship new features and then they want to probably kind of never hear about them again unless there's something that they can do to make that feature more attractive to their customers. Yeah. So then, you're really just kind of stuck deciding between, do you want to distract your devs from building awesome new features again, because the technology changes just keep happening? Or do you want customers starting to question the accuracy of your reporting because you're not keeping up with those changes? And I think that just kind of, opens this whole Pandora's box of issues, because if customers can't trust the data that they're seeing from you, they're going to start to question other things about the way that your platform and your service works, which ultimately is going to just like lead to churn, or at the very least, I would say just like a large number of support tickets that your team is dealing with. That costs money. That's stressful for your team. It opens up new areas of risk for churn as well. And then you add in the fact that a lot of email service providers have technical debt pretty much all over the place, which means that, from the outside view, what seems like a very simple and obvious feature that every ESP should be doing from the marketer view, it's actually going to require ESPs to sort of like rebuild some of the core infrastructure, because a lot of these platforms have been around for 15, 20, 25 years at this point, right? So I think, we're talking about those servers that kind of sit and collect dust in the basement, and nobody wants to touch that one black box server because who wants to be the one to knock that down, right? It's been working since the founder put it in place and nobody wants to touch it. So I think, this is a massive change for ESPs to kind of deal with. And it's one that's going to require like a lot of scoping and research before it could even be added to the product roadmap. And then on top of that, I think, there's so many issues. I'm sorry, I just keep going here. But like, there is the fact that a lot of the bigger, more well-established ESPs have been acquired by non-email companies who maybe don't understand or kind of prioritize building new email features. They've kind of put that platform into maintenance mode. So there's like this misalignment in plans for the future of the company. And that's only going to get harder to get this to the top of the roadmap, right? Like you're fighting against multi-channel, you're fighting against push, you're fighting against SMS, all these other things. And I think, keep in mind, we're talking about Apple MPP here. That was your question, Sella. But it's not just Apple who's triggering these kind of open events, right? For example, Yahoo preloads images in some cases, so does Gmail. So ESPs would really kind of have to account for those prefetched opens for those providers too, which adds even more complexity to what data the ESPs need to be collecting to be able to build those new reports. And then, by the time they do that, Apple or one of these other providers is going to pivot again, change something in the way that they kind of, were able to track that information. It's maybe we'll have another provider announce something similar, right? So for all these reasons, I don't think ESPs are ever really going to embrace trying to make opens more accurate. Ultimately, separating out that bot activity from humans is really just a hard nut to crack. And I think most ESPs are going to decide that it's the juice isn't really worth the squeeze, I guess you could say. Not with how quickly changes are happening in this industry. I just don't see it.
It's a classic catch-22. We will talk about the new senders guidelines later. However, part of those guidelines is to send emails to people who want to get your emails. As marketers, we don't have the data. Open metrics are bloated because of MPP, and clicks bloated in some cases because of bots are clicking on emails. We call it non-human interactions. If we don't have the data, how can we comply with the new senders guidelines, which say to send emails to people who want to get your emails?
Yeah, well, I think there's been so much focus on the positive metrics, right? We always talk about opens and clicks and click-through rates and conversions and things like that. But I think oftentimes people don't focus enough on the negative metrics. So unsubscribes do not hurt your deliverability, but they do signal a problem, like a negative sentiment within your recipient base, people who don't want to receive your emails anymore. So I think you should look into those, but spam complaints as well, right? One of the main requirements from Yahoo and Google's new list is to keep your spam complaints low, right? Below 0.3 at all times, below 0.1 as often as possible, right? You shouldn't see any spikes. And I think it's, we need to rely on the full picture of data that we have from recipients and not just opens, which, they've never really been reliable. They've always been indicative of of a machine that's kind of loading up some data. Obviously, that's sometimes driven by humans, but I think it's just more follow the larger trends. Stop trying to look so closely at what happens when you sent to bob@hotmail.com necessarily, but just what happened when you sent to all those people. What is the overall sentiment of that segment that you're sending to?
With the release of iOS 18, Apple is disrupting the inbox once again with tabs in Apple Mail. As we record this podcast, we don't have enough data on the effect of Apple Mail tabs on the email industry, but we can learn from tabs from other mailbox providers such as Gmail. What do you think about tabs? Should email marketers be worried or not?
Yeah, well, this is a fun one. This is a very polarizing topic. So thank you for this, Sella. Yeah. It's funny because Google first released their tabbed inbox experience over a decade ago. And I remember when marketers were really upset about that. And then there was a bunch of reports that came out maybe like a year later that kind of showed, hey, like this isn't really a problem. Everything's kind of fine. If you look at your open rates, they're still pretty much just chugging along the way that they did before. And that was a really long time ago, like a full 10 years ago. So, I've seen people talk about how they are making so much more money when they land in the primary tab of these inboxes, but I have yet to see any actual data that supports that beyond just extremely anecdotal use cases of somebody saying, oh yeah, the day that we think we went, like, how do you even know that you went to the primary tab? Yes, there is seed testing to try to directionally help you with that, but it's just, there's so many variables that make this really hard to understand. I am personally very firmly in the camp that believes that the promotional email belongs in that promotional tab, that you shouldn't be trying to game the system. Honestly, right. When you think about this, email recipients are in the right frame of mind to purchase something when they're in that promotions tab, which means you're going to have higher conversion rates when they actually do start to engage. It's for me, because I'm a child of the 80s, it's kind of like going to the mall, right? When I'm ready to shop, I'm going to go to the mall, I'm going to hit the stores, I'm going to spend a whole bunch of money, and then I'm not going to think about shopping again for maybe a couple of months or something, right? The promotions tab lets me think about spending money on my terms when it's convenient for me, not when it's convenient to the person who's trying to sell me stuff, which I think is, it's super easy to do because email's not fleeting the way that social media is, right? Like I could rack up 100 different emails from multiple brands over the course of a couple months that are all within like the same category. Maybe I'm trying to buy a bathing suit or something like that, right? These are all just a search term away for me within my promotions tab. So I can kind of see who's got a sale, who's got the best, designs that I'm looking for, things like that, right? So I think that's super helpful. But then on the other hand, figure when you are not in your promotions tab, you're not really in the right frame of mind to be getting pitched to be receiving promotional content that's mixed in between emails from your friends, your family that are about your weekend plans, basically things like that, or maybe a newsletter or two that you have told Gmail that you find very important and you want to land in your inbox, perhaps like the Send It Right newsletter that I've just started. But anyway, I think you figure you want to get that stuff that's promotional out of the way when you're in your primary tab and you're focusing on like the rest of your life, which means I'm personally going to drag that over to the promotional tab anyway, or maybe unsubscribe if I'm being nice. If I'm not, I might mark it as spam because, maybe I don't remember why I signed up or if I even signed up because it's in my primary tab. I'm not really thinking about that stuff, right? And then, we should also talk about, all the change that we keep seeing within our industry, right? We talked about this earlier, but, any success that you tend to have with getting mails into the primary tab is so fleeting. Like it's, by the time that you kind of try to keep sending and replicating what you think maybe have worked, that window probably closed or it really was just some sort of anecdotal success. So I think you really kind of have to focus on just, sending it right. Stop trying to force your way into people's lives in a way that's convenient for you and instead really just spend time focusing on, how can you surprise and delight and add value to your user's day in some way, shape, or form, even when that mail is landing where it belongs, which is in the promotional tab.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, another mega event in the email industry is Google and Yahoo new sender guidelines. We call it with the funny name Yahoo Girl. You recently hosted a webinar with the people from both Yahoo and Gmail. What are, the primary takeaways senders should know about the new sender guidelines?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think don't call it Yahoogle or Goohoo or anything else anymore. I think Clea Moore, the representative I spoke to from Yahoo, made it super clear that it's not really about Google or Yahoo, right? It's really much larger than that. And I think actually since their announcement, Microsoft has gone on, verbal record, let's say, saying that they are actually going to be reinforcing this, having some sender requirements that are at least, pretty similar to those, if not exactly the same. So think about this from the bigger picture. It's really about creating like a trusted environment for our mutual customers, which is email recipients. Mailbox providers care about that, and so do senders, right? The goal is really to help keep them safe, keep them happy within their inboxes, and to also protect our own brands from becoming a target of abuse, right? Like we're seeing volume of emails that's increasing year over year. And that's a good thing, right? But there are new attack vectors that come with that constantly. CloudStrike, is unrelated to email necessarily, but a very recent example of how bad things are getting, how critical security is in our world on the internet today. Clea put this into context by kind of saying that, about 95% of the email that Yahoo receives on any given day is like really bad stuff, phishing, malware, other stuff that they don't even accept into their servers, the stuff that us humans, like really honestly don't really think about very often. It's really kind of that remaining like 5% of the mail that they're accepting into their servers that's kind of either gray or white, and they're trying to sort out which percent, which folks within that 5% are actually trusted senders that people want to hear from, and which ones are potentially dangerous folks that they need to keep away from their users. And honestly, AI is just making this tougher, and it's accelerating the volume. It's making, spam much more sophisticated. It's easier to fall for phishing attacks at this point. And this just makes that task much more challenging for mailbox providers to kind of separate things out, especially, if you've got folks that are falling for phishing attempts. If they're not marking that as phish, then, from the mailbox provider's view, that could actually be seen as positive engagement. I'm not sure how their filters work for sure, but consider they're looking at engagement, right? So it really is important for us to kind of, secure our brands. I think, Dan Givol from Google put this as like, there is no better time to be more secure. The more quickly you set up authentication, the less likely you're going to be an attractive target for spammers, for phishers, for these bad actors to take advantage of your domain. They'll move on to somebody else's because it's almost like, you're the faster person running away from the bear, right? So they're going to get eaten. You're not going to get eaten, hopefully, right? So I think that's super helpful. But, really, I think what these new sender requirements mean for people is that we need to understand that, by requiring authentication on all of the sending domains that we're using for bulk mail, it is just so much easier for mailbox providers to tell one sender apart from another, even one mail stream within a certain sender's kind of portfolio. They can tell those apart really easily. And that means that senders who are really not doing right by email are getting the deliverability that they deserve now more than they ever have in the past. And I think that means that you really, you got to send it right? Like no more loopholes, no more workarounds. It's truly time to kind of embrace the best practices that mailbox providers have really politely been suggesting for probably about a decade at this point. Really just focus on the recipient, focus on making sure that they're having a wonderful experience and that you're connecting with them. You're building a relationship as opposed to just trying to boost your stats, right? Like these are humans we're sending to.
Right. What do you think will be their next step? Because I give you an example. Yahoo is saying that DMARC should have an RUA tag. Gmail, not so much, not telling that this is a requirement at the moment.
Yeah. I'm sad that they haven't. My guess is that they're trying to kind of breadcrumb this out where they're like, we just need you to get the record in place. And then from there, we know that we can kind of step you up. But I think it's important to remember that the second to last letter in DMARC stands for reporting. The whole point is to be able to kind of see what's happening, what activity is happening within your domain, what's being sent that's not passing authentication. So maybe this is just you setting up an invalid record and kind of failing some of your mail. So it's a good way to be able to kind of track that and fix those issues. But it also could let you know of potential kind of outside factors that are affecting your deliverability. So imagine if you're getting somebody who's using your domain for phishing attempts, you might be getting phish reports associated with your domain. It's not coming from you. Perhaps you see that the characters within your DMARC reports are in Russian or some other language that you don't send in, right? Like in those cases, it's very easy for you to tell what's going on. So I really wish they would have required that, but if you folks are setting up your DMARC records, get the reporting in place. Be aware of the fact that eventually, maybe a couple of years down the road from this point, these providers are going to require you to probably go from a P equals none policy where you're just monitoring to something like a P equals quarantine where you're basically telling them if the mail doesn't pass authentication, keep it away from the inbox, put it somewhere else, right? So take the time now to do it. Set it up properly, monitor those reports. It's kind of a pain, but once you get used to it, it really is valuable information that shouldn't take you that much time to monitor.
I think we can agree that many senders, just rely on the platform to do it all. They're not understanding the delicate ecosystem of email. And as you say, they need to know how to send it right, but they're not at the moment.
Yeah. And, I think, I feel like ESPs have sort of enabled this, not out of want to mislead customers or make them not be able to send it the way that they should. But I think it's really just, ESPs want to make it easy. They want users to come on the platform, find it wonderful right from the beginning, have a good experience, as opposed to going through very technical setup before they can even send a test. We want that. We want people to get sticky with our platforms, but there's all these kind of things that are challenging and hard to explain and require a lot of support from your customer support teams. I know there's been cases where our support team jumped on calls with customers to work through authentication issues, for 20, 30 minutes. And it's valuable time. Those customers really appreciated it. Now they're sending it right. But at the same time, that is a lot of resources for ESPs that are supporting hundreds, thousands of customers.
Until the new sender guidelines, Gmail allowed marketeers to use their personal Gmail as their email address they are sending from with their ESP. So it's a huge change, in my opinion.
It is. Yeah, and I think that's, maybe it was naive for mailbox providers to think that when they recommended something that a lot of people are going to do it. Like, you get the early adopters in any kind of technology, so best practices, right? But even me, for DMARC, I want to say that at least the first couple of years that it existed, I would hear about it at conferences and then hear, this is probably not something you need to worry about for a while. And I would kind of just check out, because even just the letters DMARC, I was like, oh, my brain, I don't want to think about this. And I didn't have to yet, right? So I think it's when you get senders who are focused on their business, not on email, right? I think we all sit in this nice little knitting circle within the email groups. We understand this stuff. We're passionate about this stuff. Everybody else is just using email to facilitate their business, to get to their goals, right? And so I think we kind of forget about that, of just this is just a ton of red tape, right? I just set up my newsletter for Send It Right. And it's even for me, who is an email person, I was like, ooh, am I doing this correctly? Where do I go to set this up? Where do I create my DKIM record? This is more challenging than I would have liked, right? So I'm imagining how difficult that is for somebody who is trying to do that. It's hard when you're not used to this stuff.
Over the past years, you've been a part of SocketLabs. Could you explain to people what is SocketLabs for those who don't know?
Yeah, sure. So SocketLabs is basically an email service provider. We've been providing service to the industry for about 17 years or so now. Our platform is very similar to a SendGrid, a Mailgun, Amazon SES. We support mainly transactional senders, as you mentioned, Sella, but we've also got, lots of marketing people as well, people sending through API, SMTP, all kinds of stuff. Essentially, I think, we've just got incredibly powerful pipes that help people reach the inbox. And that's really what we've been known for in the past. But we've kind of taken a hard left into email analytics in the last couple of years, right? So that's been fun too.
You recently developed 2 exceptional solutions, especially for email service providers. Could you provide additional information about each of those and elaborate on what makes them so unique? That's
right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you, first of all, because I'm glad you love it as much as I do. I honestly, I've been working in email for 17 years, and it's over the years, I think we've all gotten used to just working with sort of table scraps of data and putting together these pictures. And we're almost like patchwork quilters at this point, because we're so good at just being data from over here. Let me put it together. Let me put it into a pivot table. Let me throw it into a BI tool. We're doing all these things without really kind of thinking about how much work that is. And, I basically SocketLabs a couple of years ago, we brought on a bunch of people that their history is working for ESPs, for deliverability and security vendors, things like that. And honestly, we think that the industry is underpowered when it comes to email analytics, right? Obviously we all want to have powerful sending pipes reach the inbox, but part of the way that you do that is by monitoring your performance. And that's just incredibly hard, incredibly time consuming, and quite honestly, not that accurate, because the data we're using is flawed and we're all manually manipulating it. So it's how much are you paying attention that day? How tired were you? Were you hangry? What were you doing? Right. Is that data accurate, right? And so I think it's really, for me, it's not about building a smarter pipe to send through. It's really about kind of, building smarter applications kind of around that pipe to make it smarter, right? Which is why I think, in the past few years, we have really delved deep into creating tools that enable operators who are managing their sender reputation and the performance of their ESP customers. Or maybe they're an enterprise brand who has lots of different mail streams, lots of different divisions and email groups and all these things. And everyone's kind of doing it, right? We've got some higher ed customers who just have lots of different, schools within their university, lots of different departments. They've got alumni sending stuff. They've got, people trying to get in, new students enrolled. And there's just a lot of complexity and a lot of moving parts. And so we wanted to make that really easy, right? So I think, there's so many ways you can do that. So I think, one of those is just having really robust email permissions, user permissions, so that you can really delegate access to keep people focused on what their day-to-day is, right? If you're the one sending email, you need the tools to be able to send and monitor, but maybe you're just in charge of the configuration, right? You're an IT or dev or something like that. So giving you that access as opposed to the person who's sending. Maybe you just need to see reports or pay the bills, keep the lights on, right? So whatever your role is, that was one step. We're really working to improve the way that people send. So this, I think, started a couple of years ago with our stream score, which really just kind of dives deeply into all that lovely first and third party data that's available with email, right? It's such a robust channel, but the data's flawed, right? So we're pulling in stuff like Google Postmaster tools, your spam trap and block listing feeds, bounce responses that are specific there. And really just, kind of trying to provide a snapshot of your email reputation down to the sending domain or the customer level if you're an ESP, right? And this really allows people to have kind of that quick diagnosis by issue type for all their senders, right? Is it a list collection issue? Is it an engagement issue? Is it reputation based? It's something that we're seeing from the mailbox providers. What does that look like? And then we kind of pair that information with guidance on what's driving that issue, what steps you probably need to take to resolve it. And then once we kind of got that stream score into a really solid place, looking at all the edge cases, really trying to make sure that the confidence level in that is high across our entire customer base. We really wanted to build out a bunch of different reports on top of that, right? So we've got, sort of the table stakes type of reporting that gives you, your dashboard, but then also your delivery reports, failure reports, complaints and bounce reports, your message details so that you can see all the way down to the bounce details and the responses within that JSON event log, right? So getting really detailed for the folks that are power users at the ESPs, the ones who really kind of understand the tooling and sort of where to look within those haystacks to find their needles. But I think, then there's also kind of those less experienced users, which I can tend to say is probably the majority of people sending emails. So, let's say if you're an ESP person who's working in deliverability compliance, or you're in customer support or customer success, you're tasked with identifying issues quickly, trying to resolve them before they cause damage, explaining to the customer what happened and why, and probably why it's not your ESP's fault, because they oftentimes think that, but then also creating enough of a story, providing enough information to be able to help that person affect change, right? To get their decision makers on board, to be able to change what needs to change, to be able to reach the inbox more effectively, right? So we just keep creating these tools for better reporting. And then we've got something called Rule Engine that basically allows practitioners to make changes to their traffic shaping, their IP pool setups, all of those configuration things that typically you have to go and kind of ask a dev person to help you with and kind of wait a couple weeks after you've filed that ticket. You can make those changes directly within our UI or send us an API call and we'll be able to push that for you. And people have really just been creating some really unique rule sets here that just allow them to make this very specific to the quality of senders, the traffic that they're seeing through their platform, right? Being able to kind of set those different reputation-based shared pools if they've got those or things like that. So that's been great. I think ultimately the last thing about this is where we really come into Spotlight, right? So all of this reporting has been available for our customers, but we realized that, not everybody is in a place where they can migrate all of their traffic over to SocketLabs as an ESP. We get some of that traffic, but it's only a portion of what they're sending, especially for these larger, ESP types where they really care about redundancy and things like that, right? So we decided to just take all these tools that our customers have been enjoying and make them available to senders of other platforms. So we started with SendGrid and Mailgun, since there's a lot of folks who are using one or both of those platforms and need kind of a unified view of all their customers and all their sending data. And next, we're going to be adding, Amazon SES, probably Spark Post or Bird after that. And really the goal here is just giving ESPs better insights into the individual customers that they're using with sort of a stream monitor, right? So then you can see which ones have the lowest stream scores, which ones maybe have a higher urgency score because something has changed very recently. So instead of going in and just jumping in and out of each account and hoping you find something or hoping you don't find an issue, you can just kind of focus your day specifically into what happens and just drill down within 3 clicks, land on the problem, send that report to your customer success manager, have them proactively reach out to the customer, share that information and get ahead of that problem, as opposed to kind of waiting for the opposite, which is the customer complaining and then you scrambling to figure out what it is and spending hours in reporting. So it's really exciting. We've got free trials going. We've got a bunch of customers coming on board now. So if you're interested, contact me. I'd love to show it to you and at least even just get your feedback.
And the next step is adding the rule engine to Spotlight. Yes. So yeah.
That's where the magic really happens, honestly.
Yeah. Cool, because that's basically a huge challenge for every ESP. So every ESP, that's the challenge. Managing the IP space, understand the data in real time, being proactive with the deliverability. And that's a game changer, totally, in my opinion.
I think especially for ESPs that have a lot of customers on shared pools, figure it's like you eventually run into an issue where somebody like Microsoft decides to block your entire shared IP range or something like that, or even just that shared IP pool. And you're sort of playing guesswork of which customer caused it. And you're hoping that the mailbox provider tells you, or you're hoping there's some kind of smoking gun. Sometimes there is no smoking gun. It's just a couple of customers who kind of inched you over the edge. And so I think it's just being able to identify those quickly, deal with them, but again, try to proactively get ahead of that. So you identify that customer when their stats are kind of just a little stinky as opposed to really, really problematic. We are talking to a lot of ESPs right now, and it's amazing how even from the outside view, even when they're competitors, the inside looks a little bit different. And so I think that's where we see all these different custom implementations of tools and the way their data works and where it's stored and how easily they can access or compute it and all these things. And it's oftentimes, let's say if you're an ESP that's using SendGrid, a lot of those platforms have been set up, a lot of those accounts have been set up where all the customers are dumped into one sub account. So I figure then from there, you're looking at them as if they're one customer. And so being able to kind of split that out, we've got something called super tags, which kind of is like a layer deeper within metadata. So it's you can start to tag things to be able to separate that out. So even if you're a SendGrid customer, start sending us your data, and then we can give you a stream score into every single one of your customers without you having to make any changes to your configuration or your setup with SendGrid. So I think we're really trying to just, enable smarter sending without having to kind of make the pipe itself smarter, just really giving people better insights that they can do what they want with.
AI is in the center of attention right now, with everyone and everything using it somehow. Putting the hype aside, what role would you like AI to have in email marketing that would be impactful?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because AI is just all the rage right now, right? And there's all these tools coming out, particularly for things within generative AI, right?
Sure.
To creating certain types of content. But I think it's there's 2 types of sort of things that come into play with AI, right? There's machine learning, which people have been doing for over a decade, if not 20 years, right? There are these internal data sets that folks have been using to kind of try to, come up with ways to view their data, to view their customer quality, things like that. It's honestly, we created Stream Score using machine learning, not actual AI, right? So we're training up these models. I think what you need to do is have a really good sense of what your data is. And then the part that has sort of been very, very popular within AI recently is the large language models, right? The LLMs. Yeah. So what, I think people are confusing is you've got machine learning, you've got the LLM, that really needs to just sit on top and sort of do what you're telling it to. So the more important part is making sure that your data is incredibly secure, that you're crunching it in the right way, right? If we're using this for email purposes, making sure that you have somebody who understands what is most important within email or within deliverability or whatever you're trying to do, and then optimizing around that. And then you find the right LLM to sit on top of it, right? Because there's multiple. I think right now our company is testing 8 different ones to kind of figure out which one or ones would be the most beneficial to us. But I think it's very challenging for people to understand what AI is what it does, but it's one of those, like, it's just creating lots of kind of black boxes where people don't really understand where the output is coming from, how it's being computed.
Right.
I think that's really one of the challenges we're seeing right now.
I'm curious to know your thoughts about the role of AI in deliverability.
Yeah. Well, I think, I don't want to spoil what we're working on because my product team will probably kill me. But essentially, I think we're looking, because we're so data driven, we really care about putting email data to good use. Like, we're looking to use that to kind of better hone the insights that we're sharing, right? So not just kind of showing you, hey, there's a problem, there's a fire that you need to put out, here's where it is and what's causing it, but actually kind of getting more into like the positive parts of email, the parts that marketers love, the parts that deliverability people don't have time to care about, but just like, hey, like, this one mail stream is doing fantastic. You could probably send more often there, or you could send more smartly if you segment this list into a couple different ways. Or, hey, you could change the traffic shaping on this. We're seeing this certain bounce message. If you adjust this way, that will help you. And so I think there's lots of opportunities for people to kind of, pour gasoline on their email programs in the right ways, but also know when to kind of pump the brakes. And so I think that's the role that I see within AI. Right now, it's purely, generative. I know some people are getting into segmentation, which is awesome. But I really think it's one of those, like, we'll be able to use it to kind of take away those hours of number crunching that all of us deliverability people love so much. Like, I'm going to miss it. But, Brian from our team was actually looking into an issue for a customer not too long ago. And it's one of those, it was a very challenging issue. There was a lot going on. I think maybe it took him about 2 hours to kind of really kind of put that whole investigation together. And honestly, Brian is one of the most smart individuals in deliverability, if you ask me. So like, maybe that would have taken me 3 or 4 or 5 hours. I don't know what it would have taken. I didn't do it, thankfully, but we threw that into the AI that our team is looking at. They landed on the same exact problem within like less than 30 seconds. So like, it's one of those, like, he is very hard to impress. And Brian was like, oh, that's cool. So I think there are things that AI can do, but I think it's really important for us to understand, like, how is the sausage being made, right? Is that an organic sausage that we know is going to be healthy for us? Kind of sausage is not very healthy, but, or is it going to be, something that kind of leads us astray and pushes us to do things. Like, imagine if you have an AI that's like, you're not seeing enough activity. You're not seeing enough opens, just send more. Like, that's not the answer when you're dealing with a very unengaged population. Like, you need to mix up the content, right? So, having it be able to give smart recommendations that actually apply to your email program, but also don't, shoot yourself in the foot when it comes to deliverability.
Yeah. You recently started a new newsletter called Set It Right.
Yes, I did.
It's a great name, by the way. So can you tell us more about what drove you, to start a content initiation, like that?
Yeah. I think, I've been very passionate about educating people about deliverability for a very long time. It starts when you're working internally and you're just trying to get your own salespeople to follow the terms of service that you hold your customers to, or you're trying, you're trying to do something basic. And so you're advocating for email, you're advocating for best practices internally. But I think it's, the more people I talk to, the more I realize that, it's kind of like that 95-5 equation that I was talking about with really bad mail versus good mail. There's 95% of, let's say, the senders in the world don't care about deliverability. A lot of them don't even know it exists. They definitely don't know what SPF or DKIM records look like, even if they're still struggling with deliverability to some of those top providers. And so I really just wanted to make it easier, right? I wanted people to be able to understand what matters about deliverability, how you reach the inbox, like in a way that is easily digested, right? So like, I try to have some fun with this stuff. I throw in a lot of like metaphors and things like that to try to, just have a little fun, right? Get some laughs along with your deliverability guidance. And so I think that's my goal, is really just, I don't know. It's kind of like give everyone a crush on deliverability, throw a little bit of cooties their way, I guess you could say, just get them excited about doing right by email, right? And, send it right. That's it. I want people to send it right. And I want it to be easy as pie for them to do that.
Amazing. So how can people find and register? Obviously, I will share it in the show notes, but say it out
Thanks,
loud.
I appreciate that. So my website is send-it-write.com. I tried to find a better one, I promise, but I didn't want to go with a TLD of .email, as cool as that maybe would be. So send-it-write.com. I've got a newsletter sign up there. So I've got a weekly newsletter that I can send to your inboxes. Hopefully, since my whole thing is send it right, it better reach the inbox. But beyond that, I've got a list of a bunch of email folks that you should be following, tools that I love to use that help me send it right, videos and upcoming events, lots of different kind of goodies for people when they're curious about deliverability, hopefully without overwhelming you. So look at my website, or come find me on LinkedIn as well. I'm very active there, and I've got a nice little link from my profile over to my website.
Yeah. I said at the beginning that we both have share a hobby, share a passion, and now is the right time to reveal what what it is. So we both pizza lovers and makers. So you used to have on your LinkedIn, I think, pizza lover. I think that last time I scrolled your profile, it wasn't there, but I know you still love pizza. So.
I do. And, I love pizza to the point that my 5-year-old twins are like, the other day my son was like, Mom, like what? Why do we eat so much pizza? I was really sad because I was like, you're asking because you think we eat pizza too much and you're sick of it. So I get it. And to be clear, it's not that often, but it's often enough for a kid to be annoyed by it. But yeah, so I've got one of those uni pizza making ovens. So sometimes I make those. It's kind of hard to get in the hang of it. You got to kind of screw up one or two first, and then you usually get some good pies, but they're delicious. So I kind of go with like a thin crust for those. But then there's this one when I was in New York City that I used to get all the time, which is not New York City style. I guess if I'm going for that, go to Grimaldi's or Juliana's, which is the one next door, but it's just a nicer vibe. But my favorite slice, I think, in the whole world is from this place called Emmy Squared. So it's like Detroit style pizza. So it's kind of like those square pizzas. It's got like this really buttery kind of crust. And the one I like the best has like pepperoni on top, and then also some like jalapenos, and then it's also got like a drizzle of hot honey on it. So it's so good.
So you've probably seen the documentary on Netflix about pizza.
Yeah.
Have you seen it?
I haven't seen it.
I
need to check
there
it
is
out.
a chef's table, 10 episodes of pizza makers around the world. Amazing.
Love that. Yeah.
So thank you very much, Lauren. It's been a pleasure. And you mentioned that people can follow you both on LinkedIn and sign to your newsletter, and I will put both on the show notes.
That sounds awesome. Yeah, thanks. Appreciate you having me on.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
This podcast is brought to you by DATAMEDIA, email deliverability and email marketing consulting services.